Ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to be here today to discuss the progress and the future prospects of renewable energy and what is the role of solar PV in the energy system. And additionally, I will touch upon the role of the International Renewable Energy Agency, IRENA, and its mission. So we can move to the next slide, please. And we can delve into the journey that the renewable energy has undertaken. And this chart shows the progression of additional power capacity over time. And it reveals that the energy sector, and particularly the electricity sector, is already undergoing an incredible transformation. So we can see that 20 years ago, only 15% of the additional capacity was renewable, while today it stands at 83%. In 2022 only, we have seen the largest annual increase in the renewable energy addition ever recorded, totaling almost 300 gigawatts, and this was a record. And this expansion not only confirms the upward trajectory of the renewables, but also contrasts with the decline trend that we see in new fossil fuel capacity. This chart, however, lacks a distinction by technology, and let me say more importantly, does not provide a geographical perspective. Because despite the progress, we should recognize that the large-scale deployment of renewable remains concentrated in specific countries and specific regions, which around 75% of the 300 gigawatts concentrated in China, in the European Union, and the United States. So it became clear that expanding renewable deployment to nations lacking electricity access is imperative for achieving global sustainability and equity. So we can move to the next slide, please. And we can look here at how renewable technologies have evolved and the main reason driving this change. So the first thing we notice from the chart is the most installed technology, which is hydropower. But there is a catch here. It doesn't have much room to grow anymore. You see, hydropower has been around for a long time, and this is a consolidated technology, but this is a pretty much reach its limit in terms of how much more we can implement it. So the technology that has instead seen the greatest growth is, of course, solar PV. Overall, there are becoming more competitive, and schemes that prove to be most efficient are technologically neutral. And let me say that this shift has stimulated innovation and contributed to the technology has played a huge role. Advances in technology have made renewable energy sources more efficient and more affordable. And this means that they can compete more effectively with traditional fossil fuels. In fact, today, the electricity generated from renewables is already the most economic power option globally. And in most markets, it's not just better to build renewable over fossil fuels, but it is also cost-effective to construct new renewables power plants rather than utilize existing fossil fuel plants. So lastly, there is a growing demand for sustainability, the point 3. People and companies are increasingly looking for renewable energy sources to power the operations. And power producers sell electricity to the industry. But At the same time, the industry clients increasingly demand decarbonized products, where it is cement, aluminum, shoes, or t-shirts. This growing demand for decarbonized products is expanding. And consequently, industry established decarbonization goals, leading them to seek renewable energy from utilities and power producers. At the same time, electricity producers are also setting decarbonization goals. And this presents two pathways. One involves expanding the electricity generation portfolios. But however, these players are not only a generator of electricity, but also procure it from the market. Therefore, the second pathway involves committing to purchasing renewable electricity from the market. So through the combination of these three factors, regulation, technology, and demand, the renewable energy have gained ground in the most developed markets. And this is not just a trend, but right now it is imperative to ensure that all nations, particularly those lacking reliable access to electricity, have the opportunity to adopt the renewable energy solutions. We can now move to the next slide. Thank you. And in this chart shows how renewables energy cost changed between the 2020 and the 2021. And despite the pandemic challenges, renewable electricity costs keep going down, which is historic. For example, we can see here the global levelized cost of electricity for utility scale solar PV, and it decreased mainly because more panels come from China. But it is even more impressive when you see the last 10 years. Just consider that from 2010 to 2021, the LCOE for solar PV decreased by 88%. And similar trends were seen for other renewable energy sources. For example, the LCOE for concentrated solar power dropped by 68%, and for onshore and offshore wind by 68% and 60% respectively. Now, moving to the next slide. Okay, can you move to the next slide, please? So give them 1 second to move to the next slide. Okay, thank you. So, no, the previous one, Yes, thanks. So far we have looked at the past, and now let's have an eye on the future and explore how renewables will shape the global energy scenarios. So in this chart, you can see a comparison of the two electricity generation capacity scenario from the World Energy Transition Outlook, the WITO, one of the main IRENA publications. And the PES, the Planet Energy Scenario, on the left, is based on the government's current energy plans. Instead, the 1.5 scenario outlines the energy system needed to keep the temperature rise below 1.5 degrees. Under the 1.5 scenario, the end-use sector will undergo rapid electrification by 2050, and this will lead to 3 times increase in global electricity demand from the 2020 levels. The power sector is expected to decarbonize more than most other sectors, with renewable energy making up 68% of the total electricity generation by 2030 and 91% by 2050. And notably, variable renewable energy sources, such as solar PV and wind, are expected to lead the transformation of the global electricity sector, contributing to 70% of electricity generation by 2050. We can go now to the next slide. Okay, so let's take a closer look at the renewable energy generation capacity in the 1.5 scenario. And under this scenario, the global installed solar PV capacity is expected to increase nearly 8 times. By 2030, we anticipate a net change capacity of 5,000 gigawatts, and from 2030 to 2050, an additional 30,000 gigawatts. And more on that, both offshore and offshore wind capacity are predicted to experience significant growth, with onshore reaching 3,000 gigawatts by 2030, and offshore nearly 500 gigawatts by 2030. However, achieving these targets requires, of course, substantial investment, as it is highlighted in the next slide. Next slide, please. Okay, transforming the power sector, we will need around 2.2 trillion annually. You can see in the blue box below. And most of this funding will be directed towards developing renewables. And specifically, nearly 1.4 trillion per year will be allocated to advance renewable power generation technology, but also integrating various renewable energy sources require investment in the grid networks and flexibility systems, and totaling approximately 0.8 trillion annually. Now, moving to the next slide. So let's now take a look at what is the current investment status and the historical trend. So this graph shows the financial commitment in renewable energy categorized by technology. So firstly, we can see that 2022 was a record year with 500 billion investment in renewable generation. And this is great, but we are still far from the 1.4 trillion goal that we saw in the chart before. So to meet the 1.5 scenario, we need to triple the investment in renewables. And furthermore, we observed that the power sector attracted 97% of investment in between 21 and 22, up from around 90% between 2013 and 2020. So in short, investment are not only increasing, but they are increasingly concentrated in the power sector, which is efficient and of course competitive. And this leads me to think about the need for strong electrification and therefore investment in grids and flexibility systems. And additionally, the last but not least point that comes to my mind looking at this chart is the massive growth of investment in solar PV. So just in 2022, PV attracted almost 60% of the world investments in renewable technologies. And this is not only due to technological advancement and cost reduction, but also the short time to the market that the solar PV offers. So we can move to the next slide. Yes, and I would like now to highlight the disparities in global investment distribution. So despite significant investments, more than half of the world's population received only 15% of total investment in the year 2022. So in East Asia and in the Pacific, they get the most investment, getting around 45% from 2019 and 2020, and almost 2/3 of all global investments in 2022. Most of these come from China, which got over 4/5 of the world region investment, and this is also thanks by its government ambitions that targeted peak emission in 2030 and carbon neutrality in 2060. In 2022, Europe and North America together got about 24% of the investment, sharing it almost equally between the two regions. But it is different for the 120 developing and emerging markets. They only got about 15% of all the investment in 2022. And this share has been going down since the 2018. So the least developed country in particular have received low levels of investment, averaging less than 1% between 2013 and 2020. Now moving to the next slide and the last slide. So let me wrap up by telling you a bit about IRENA and our goal in the project financing and support. IRENA is the International Renewable Energy Agency. It is a leading global intergovernmental agency for energy transformation with 168 member states plus the European Union. And we acknowledge that meeting international climate and development goals require a huge shift of money towards renewables. And we estimate that around 150 trillion will need to go into the energy system by 2050, focusing on technology that can help keep global temperature rise within 1.5 degrees, as outlined in the Paris Agreement. Indeed, during the COP28, there was the agreement to triple the renewable power capacity, and do this crucial goal, and due to the big difference in where investments are made, IRENA is overseeing two initiatives focused on project facilitation and support. The Energy Transition Accelerator Financing Platform, the ETAF, and the CIP, that stands for Climate Investment Platform. Both platforms aim to help mobilize the capital to develop projects and advance the energy transition in developing markets. And so far, you can see from the map that we have supported over 100 projects worldwide, and 8 projects totaling about 1 gigawatt of renewable capacity have already reached the financial closure. So let me thank you for this invitation, and if you are interested in learning more about our platform, the ETAF and the CIP, or if you have projects you like to ask for support, please visit our website that is written down on the right corner of the slides, and get in touch with us. Thank you so much.